Jeff had done some field work here in Costa Rica, and he has a little teak farm that's, I don't know, it's probably about an hour and a half from Vera and my house, and he was in town to check on his teak farm, and we were at a bar near Montezuma, and I had been researching another book that I was scribbling away at that had a Catholic priest, and I started kind of pegging on Father Tom to get some information to write about the character of this priest, where he went to seminary, how long that took, and things like that. But every page that I opened, I was like, my gosh, I'm in the wrong story here. This guy's story is incredible, and he was so I'm sitting here at this bar, and I tell Jeff about this this unbelievable Catholic priest, and I'm looking at his face like morph, and in the telling of the story, and I think he needs to take it from here, because I pretty much had to duck from the beer that was about to be spilled.
Yeah, my jaw dropped on the floor when Chris told me the story, and my beer probably did as well. And so I signaled to the bartender, we're going to need another round here, at least one more round. And Chris, tell me all the details, everything you know. He shared with me what he'd learned about this incredible incident that happened in World War II with this chaplain, Father Thomas Asina, at the heart of it, but it was much bigger than him. There's a lot of moving parts to this story. And like one of Ken Follett's guiding principles in writing World War II and other stories is that you want to have it very personal. You have these characters, but the decisions they make have global stakes. They can affect the outcome of an entire war. For example, Eye of the Needle. It's two main characters, but how they interact can affect the entire outcome of the D-Day invasion of Normandy, for example. And so in this case, that's actually what happened. The characters were interacting, very much personal story about these characters, but what they did could affect the outcome of the war in the Pacific.
I want to make clear really quickly is that this is not a tutorial on how to write a novel. That's for sure. It was literally two rookies passing documents back and forth through Facebook Messenger. Literally Word documents, and we at different times we would find a groove where we had an idea what we were going to do, and I would get maybe a note like we need 500 words on this, or we'll need 600 words on that, from Jeff. Jeff is a masterful organizer. He kept very detailed records that were. I'm not nearly as organized. I kind of we used to talk about the plotter and pantser thing. Jeff was definitely a writer who would be considered the plotter, and I was definitely the pantser. I think that I could contribute some flash to the writing, but most of the time I was kind of following along with Jeff's instructions, and he had created this scaffold that made it possible, that gave the opening for me to add some creativity where I could.
Sam and Sarah, the two main characters, are high school sweethearts in a small town in the Midwest, and they're growing up during the Depression. And his family is struggling mightily. They lose the family farm. They're barely surviving. And he ends up signing up for the National Guard. And like a lot of men in his generation, if you sign up for the National Guard, you get some decent shoes. They give you boots. They give you some clothing. They give you a roof over your head and 3 meals a day. And by gosh, that was enough to make it worthwhile. So he's in the National Guard just to get some stability. And then they graduate from high school. He's in the National Guard, and she is a math whiz. She ends up going to college, and she gets recruited into the nation's top secret spy program, basically code breaking program that was eavesdropping on the Japanese and the Germans, trying to crack their codes. And so she gets pulled into that side of the story, goes to Washington, D.C., goes to Hawaii, and is getting these important radio intercepts from the Japanese. Meanwhile, Sam, when World War II breaks out, Sam gets pulled into the war. He's in the Philippines. He's captured as a prisoner of war, goes through quite an ordeal there as well. And their stories end up intersecting later in the story.
It's based on these underlying incidences that the Arasan Maru incident was not a singular. When the tide of the war was turning, and the Japanese had many decisions to make when it came to leaving the Philippines. MacArthur coming back, the Battle of Leyte Gulf is imminent, and they were loading these men, these incredible men that had survived ordeals, unimaginable ordeals already. I mean, they had already been through the Bataan Death March in hellish conditions inside of these POW camps, and then herded and packed into the bellies of these, into the holds of these cargo ships, and creating a universe that's of horror, a universe of darkness and horror, and this was a repeated offense of the Japanese, and they were being shipped to places unknown. They could be taken to Formosa for mine work, or they could be going all the way back to Japan to be used as trading material at the end of the war. But the tide of the war was turning, and but at the same time, one of the reasons why the tide of the war was turning was because of the U.S. dominance in the submarines in the South China Sea that were clearing out all these transport ships and cutting off supply lines. I mean, this was one of the reasons why the war was turning. And of course, the incident happens. I don't know how far we want to go into the spoilers of the story, but this is where we were at this moment.
Yeah, we were just bouncing things back and forth as Chris described. Today there's all kinds of wonderful technologies for collaboration. Teams can work together on a document across time and space, and we like to joke that we use absolutely none of those modern technologies. We did it old school, just passing the attached documents back and forth like a relay race. But so we all worked on everything. And then when Bob Dugoni joined the team, he was working on the Sarah character at the code breaking operation and everything else. So we all did research, we all did writing. So yeah, in terms of her decisions at the code breaking unit, it gets kind of complicated there, because if the US had broken the Japanese code, but we couldn't let them know, we couldn't tip our hand that we'd broken their code, or they would change it, and the war might go on for years more, and thousands or tens of thousands or hundreds of thousands of people would die. And so we had to be very careful. It was next to the atomic bomb program, the Manhattan Project, the secret code breaking operation in Japan for the Japanese code was probably the best kept secret in the war. And it wasn't declassified until the 1970s. And so you can imagine, if you find out, you get a message, a Japanese radio message that says, hey, there's a convoy of 14 ships, and here's what they're carrying, and here's where they're going, and you let our submarines know, go get it. Are you going to sink 13 of the ships, but leave the one that has 1,800 American prisoners of war crammed into the hold? Just let that one go? If so, would the Japanese smell a rat and realize their code had been broken and change it immediately and extend the war? So that was the tough decision that our commanders had to make. And they decided to protect the safest secret and sink ships knowing that American allied POWs were on board those ships. And as a result, out of an estimated 50,000 prisoners of war who were transported on these ships in the Pacific, more than 20,000 perished, a 40% death rate. The way Bob Dugoni joined the team is kind of an interesting story. As Chris said, that this story fell into the lap of a couple of rookie authors who had never written novels before. It is kind of unfortunate it didn't land in the lap of Robert Dugoni, or an established author who could just run with it right away. You imagine the metaphor of the railroad, the train going down the tracks, and we're out in front laying down the tracks as we go, trying to learn how to write a novel while we research this story at the same time. And I signed up for a course, a 3-day course with Robert Dugoni, How to Write Fiction. And I thought, all right, I'll try to learn a little bit here. And Bob, as part of that course, would read the first 50 pages of the student's novel. So he read the first 50 pages of Hold Strong. He really liked it. He said, hey, can I see the rest of this story? And so we sent him the rest of the story. He really liked it. And then fast forward a couple of years, Chris and we've been working on this, and the quality of our storytelling is still not on par with the quality of the underlying true story. And it made sense at that point to bring in a master storyteller, somebody who's at the peak of his craft. And Bob was the natural choice, in part because our literary agent also happens to be Bob's literary agent. So she was able to help make that connection happen.
When Jeff and I were talking about doing this, bringing in another author, and again, Bob was the natural choice. I watched a couple of online interviews, not unlike what we're doing right now, Jake. So I listened to this guy who seemed to be so humble, and so his storytelling, just the way that he was explaining how he goes at a story, was compelling to me. And I did the obvious thing. I picked up The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell, and when I read that, I wasn't in 40 pages before I went, this is our man. I mean, this is the guy who can bring this thing home. And I knew if you've read Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell, I knew that my embrace of this story has always been Father Tom from the beginning. I wanted this heroic name to be out there. And I knew that he would be in capable, loving hands with Bob Dugoni after reading The Extraordinary Life of Sam Hell. And I think that you would agree.
What Bob brought to the craft, the storytelling, it's everything Chris said, and then more. Bob is especially good at characterization, how to develop characters that readers don't just like, they love, like Sam Hell. And that's what we wanted. We wanted our characters to be loved. And in addition to the characters that Bob's so good at developing, he did a number of other things to elevate the quality of the storytelling. For example, the structure and the pacing. He got rid of some of the flashbacks that we had and built a more seamless building to the climax of the story. In terms of the style, the writing style, he brought a certain approach, a certain voice to the style. The dialogue is more authentic, the way people speak, especially a character, Pete Chavez. Also, just the way he describes settings. Something Chris and I will take a paragraph to describe. Bob will come in and he'll make that imagery more vivid in your mind, but he'll do it in 2 sentences, maybe 1. And that is a special skill.
I had met Jeff Langholz in a writing seminar that I teach called the Novel Writing Intensive back in Tennessee, or we kind of do it all over the place now, but with Stephen James. And he had submitted his first 50 pages, and I had read the 50 pages, and I thought they were very good. I had some suggestions on how he could make them better, and I said, when you're ready and you're looking for an agent, if the rest of the book holds together, I'd be happy to help you. So he said, well, honestly, I already have an agent. And I said, oh, that's great. And I said, who's your agent? And he said, Meg Rulli. And he started laughing. Well, that's my agent. And I said, well, listen, I wish you the best luck. You're in very good hands. I didn't hear from anybody for, quite some time. And then I started hearing through the grapevine that they were having trouble getting the book published. And I ended up emailing Jeff and saying, whatever happened. And he said, well, we've been through about 7 drafts and we just can't do the character development the way that really honors the research that they've done, because these 2 guys did 10 years of research. I mean, this book is documented like you cannot imagine. It's unlike any other World War II book ever told. So Jeff asked me, would you be willing to kind of make the quality of the writing as good as the quality of the research? And initially, I really wasn't going to do it because it's not what I do, right? And I have a lot of projects on my own. But I really also felt that these 2 men deserved to have this story published because they had spent a year of their life. They'd given a decade of their lives to bring these heroes to life. and to bring this story that has never really been told to the general public of all these heroes in the Bataan Death March and in the Philippine death camps, and then on these hell ships. It's just it's almost unbelievable, right? But that's what real life is. Sometimes truth is more unbelievable than fiction. And I just felt that they needed it. So I said I would. We got a contract with Lake Union. The hardest part was I was told, write a Robert Dugoni book. Write a Robert Dugoni book, right? But that's hard to do when you like these two guys and they've done all this research and they put together a draft. You don't want to lose their voice completely. That's just not fair to them, right? And so that was the hardest struggle for me, was trying to write a Bob Dugoni book, but also be true to what they were hoping to accomplish. And we had some moments where we had to have conversations about, the dialogue and the way people spoke back then and all those kind of things. But it was really it was a very positive experience. I can't say I'd do it again, but I can say that it was a very positive experience, and I'm really looking forward to it coming out, because this is one of those big books. It's one of those important books. We had an interviewer who read it, and she's pretty well known, and she said, this should be submitted for the Pulitzer. This is an incredible achievement. So it's become very close to my heart, this story.